vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
Thank you, John Larson. I receive your kind words on behalf of all of our courageous members of the House of Representatives who want the best for the American people. And what we can do that is best for them in the next 24 hours is to pass affordable, accessible health care for all Americans. The best for all Americans is to have 32 million more people to have health insurance in our country. The best for...
Piece of stinking filth.
Shh, say it again, Shali. This is AJ of the InfoWars. Listen to the Shaliak. This is Alex Jones of InfoWars. Listen to Shaliak on the Cold Reality News and Report.
This is the coolest thing I have ever seen.
Well, hello there.
This week on Cold Reality Radio. A look at education, the history of it, why it's still an issue and brought up every time we hear conversations on news programs about how education is a problem and education is the key. Of course it's the key. Healthcare delay over McCain's health. Johnny McCain not doing so well. Maybe it's karma catching up with him. Maybe he's going senile and blurting out truth randomly. They might have to put him down. Media is still going apeshit over Donald Jr.'s meeting. Is Pence being prepped for leadership after a possible impeachment, which is so far off the plantation? Comey writing a book. Governor's not paying any attention to Donald Trump, avoiding him. Homelessness surges in Disneyland. In Disneyland Shadow, Anaheim removes bus benches. Research team debunks global warming, inconsistent with temperature data. Trump meets with that sissy Macron, Rothschild. That and more on today's edition of Cold Reality Radio here on the UCY.TV Broadcasting Network. Sunday, July 16th. It's 10:05 on the East Coast of Nightmarica. Welcome back, Jules. Glad to hear that you're doing better. Was listening this week. Heard you speaking and talking live, and I was like, thank God you're doing well, and continued a recovery. Heard you mention something about aspirin. We got to talk about that. Aspirin, no good. No good. Okay. So, we hear constantly that education is the key. That education is the key to get the children out of the ghettos that the Democrats have created, that essentially the system has created. The Republicans just have another agenda which syncs up with the big picture. But we hear that all the time. Education, 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 education is the key. And actually, what the system really means, which they don't even know that they mean this, is that education is the key to dumbing down the entire population and creating the same cookie cutter being, with the same parroted understandings of the lies of history. Just last night was going through some of the YouTube, and I stopped at that Demon RT. I'm going to also play a clip here from the Tucker Carlson show where he has a heated conversation with a fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, another Rockefeller creation. And if it's not apparent already that we're going to be going to war with Russia, and that it's pretty much already underway, this is the stance and the approach from all of these senior fellows and fuck fellows over here at the Council on Foreign Relations, where they're taught, or their education gets, tripled and quadrupled down once they get into, positions of service to the commoners, the so-called service to the people. We're definitely, no doubt, going to be in a war with Russia at some point. And it could be that it's already pre-planned. And what I mean is that Putin's already aware of it, and Trump's already aware of it, China's already aware of it, and all they have to do is just react and do what they're told to do on a large scale. Now, is that a possibility? Sure. Is it unlikely? No. The power that we're talking about here, to be able to control just the commoners' minds, by sending them to school, putting them through 12, 16 years of a prison-like environment. College not so much, but yeah, because it's got to loosen up a little bit there, or nobody would go. It's up to you then. they've already got your money. So if you don't go to school then they just take your shit. And who is better off? Who is better off? We've heard about the college conspiracy. There was a documentary about that people that go to college make $1 million or roughly $1 million more than those who don't. I've heard people that I work with say, I spent all that money and, I'm working in computers now. And I mean, I didn't really need that. And, large scale, you didn't. But, again, we've heard the college conspiracy, and, once you get to that point where you're considered an adult, it's up to you, it's up to you whether you're going to go and you're going to get indoctrinated and have to take some kind of course, some kind of liberal arts course, some drivel shit, garbage that they, think that you need to make you that well-rounded idiot commoner. And so, we've had throughout history, we've had the Harvards and the Yales, and people have said, that they were created and they had good intention, and then they were taken over. And then, of course, your Skull and Bones and your high level, you're the Bushes and the Currys and these guys that, masturbated in a coffin to Geronimo's corpse or some bullshit. These people, I mean, even their family member, there has to be a level of even indoctrination for the family members of this system. Now, if you've got these mega universities that go back hundreds and hundreds of years, like Harvard and Yale, how were they created? Whose money created them? What money created these institutions? I say that they were never benevolent, and they were always there to control the narrative and create, the superclass, the Mitt Romneys related to one or pretty much all the presidents. And that's why he was there, going up against Barry Dunham. People can't even fathom, they don't even know. They think that Barack Obama's name is Barack Obama, and that when he was born, a little baby destined for the presidency. No, it was because he worked really hard. Yeah. Because he worked really, really hard and he became a president. Right. Barry Dunham was his birth name. A bastard, by all accounts. And by, the standards of society, whatever that fucking means to anyone, the standards of society. This is what you are. This is what you do. This is what you are if you don't do this. This is what you are if you don't do that. And so most people cannot fathom, understand, entertain that the whole system is that of a controlled system designed by a very small group of people with, compared to the Earth population or the Earth plane population. And so as we move forward, these criminals of humanity, not so much criminals of, in the legal sense, because they created a legal system that protects them from their own crimes. They create corporations and then say, and pretty much label what property is of that said corporation. And then, of course, they decide what they're going to do with their subjects. Or as Clint has said many times, that we are enemies of the state from birth. We are enemies of the state from birth. And so, how do you keep a population from understanding the truth about whatever it is that we're on, whatever it is we're doing here? How do you, once they've decided, okay, it doesn't matter where we are, what we're doing, we decide, we create the fake reality and you live it. And if it's done the right way, there will be no questioning. There will be no resistance. What is will be accepted, and then we move on. And then we control the narrative from that point forward. And it could end just like that if people would wake up to this fake news. And why is it that CNN is the only one that's kind of labeled as the fake news? Why is it CNN? Is it that CNN's going to go away? CNN's going to fold because they have lower ratings than Nick at Night? Is that the next step in this whole control of the media process, where CNN's going to go bye-byes, and then the Megyn Kellys are going to go to, their corners, where she goes from Fox, and then over here, is she going to take that liberal spin? Okay. But the indoctrination is so incredible. It's so incredible that, as I said to you last week about the bringing back the horrors of racial crimes, murder, lynching, bringing that back to the forefront of the conversation, / Black Lives Matter / all of the things that have happened, the shootings of the police while they're sitting in their cars. We're working towards a civil war. Google is helping. South Africa's being manipulated into a civil war. You have Libya, when Libya was so-called, democratized or whatever. Africa is a huge continent, right? Africa is an absolutely just incredible, vast continent. The migrants could have gone left. They could have gone right into Egypt. They could have gone south in further into Africa, but no, they went into the Mediterranean and then up into Europe, assisted by the United Nations. The same thing was done with Syria. Syria couldn't go north because Turkey was there, right? So there was a level of blockade that would not allow them to go into Turkey. They obviously couldn't go into Iraq. They were being blocked there. They couldn't go, anywhere but into the sea. And then there, of course, was the United Nations and other organizations that were planned in the beginning to make this happen. So now basically you have what amounts to the beginning of a war, a clash of civilizations in places like Sweden, places like Germany. And Germany plays a really, really key part in this, because even if you go back to World War II, not a lot of the people in Germany that were, slaughtered had anything to do politically with what was going on. But they were slaughtered after the fact. Dresden. A lot of people were absolutely decimated, people that had no connection to what Berlin or any of the political machinations that were going on there, and they were just destroyed in the book Hellstorm from 45. Just absolute carnage. I believe mostly to keep people quiet. And so now again we have Germany that's playing a huge role in the world. The scheme of thing, the migrants, the refugees, and of course you don't see any of the real information, the real videos or anything like that. I mean, I'm sure people do, but we are being steered into a absolute meat grinder. Again, last night I'm watching some of RT. Crosstalk came on. There was an older gentleman who wrote a book about the USS Liberty. There was a guy there from the Ron Paul Institute, and Ken O'Keefe, probably his first appearance, I want to say, since he appeared. Saw him live and spoke with him in Pennsylvania just recently. And he's on there, and they're talking about the USS Liberty and what happened there, where basically the guy who wrote the book said that Johnson ordered Israel to do what it did. And Ken O'Keefe was just like, hello? With all due respect, that's not the way it went down. And but for RT and Crosstalk, Peter Lavelle and that establishment there to be able to put that on the air and talk about why that happened and even the Israeli pilots were like, why are we doing this? Why are we bombing our ally? But they were like, just go do it. Just do it. Follow your orders. And then Baines Johnson, that piece of fucking shit. another piece of fucking shit president says that he wanted to sink it to the bottom, kill all of the U.S. servicemen on there, sink it to the bottom, the USS Liberty, 68, 69. This guy wrote a book about it, and then last night they brought it to the surface. And of course, John McCain's father was behind the cover-up of that. So, I mean, this goes so deep. It goes so fucking deep. These rancid demons that just run amok and do whatever they fucking want to do. And where's God? People would say, where's God when all of this satanic Luciferian shit's going on? Horrible, horrible people like John McCain. And apparently his whole family. And he's also cousins with George Washington via finding your roots on PBS genealogy show. Okay, same as Barack Obama and George Bush and all these other guys, all these people, all these presidents, with the exception of maybe one or two, related to George Washington. Okay, so why would that be? Why would that happen? We hear nothing but good things about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and all these people. And if somebody who's not related to George Washington were to become the president, that would be like, I mean, look at Trump. He's in there because he's related to Hillary. I don't know if he's related to Washington. But incredible amount of money to be able to run his own campaign, right? You need millions and millions and millions of dollars to run for president. So our political system and our, whatever that even means and how it translates down to the commoners, okay, all of that money spent, all of it. And as Bill Hicks mentioned, he said, use all that money spent on defense and this and that, and you can spend it to feed and really educate and put clothes on and give people around this world the dignity that they should have and a chance. But no, people are left to die. Instead of doing good things for the world, sanctions kill 1 million, 2 million. U.S. sanctions on different countries. Sanctions are a declaration of war. I mean, that's the bottom line. Somebody mentioned just recently that they went to Russia and said, I didn't see how the so-called sanctions against Russia were affecting Russia, because everything that they had everything that he needed, or whoever it was. I remember them saying. So is this a situation where what's going to happen over the next 5-10 years is already scripted, is already underway? And of course, John McCain doesn't have to use his he's got blood clot from above McCain's left eye on Friday. I mean, karmically, if the awful things that we do, what comes around goes around, well, why is this guy even still alive? I mean, look at all of these lifelong politicians. There's no way that they're ever going to go. I mean, they're just a shoo-in, and that's it. McCain, if he's alive, he's going to be the senator again. He's going to get reelected again. There's no way people like him that much in Arizona. There's no fucking way people like him that much. He is a devil. He's sold his soul to devils, and he is apparently karma doesn't affect you when you're that type of demon, I guess. So, hearing some pretty interesting things about the Civil War. Clint has brought up a lot about that, how basically it never really ended. It's still we're still in an emergency today, or emergency meaning war. And then everything that we were told about, why this happened and why that happened in the South and the North. Just mass manipulation, but that's for another time. Basically, everything that we've ever been told about this is a manipulated bullshit lie. Who was that? Howard Zinn. O'Keefe mentioned that reading the People's History of the United States was a huge had a huge effect on his understanding of where things are. Now, I mean, I don't know what's happened, but there's also seems to be a lot of money being, he was working with Max Egan, and I don't even, when I was speaking with him, I dare not even bring up that topic about money and the global citizen thing. Apparently, O'Keefe knows that the citizenship and the reason why he left America, and apparently it took like 3 times for him to be able to legitimately be gone from the United States corporation. But he knows it's a contract. And then he said, and part of that contract is our tax dollars go to blah, blah, blah. Well, killing people, and he didn't want that. So he goes to the UK, and then he's in the UK, and he's living there. I don't think he's a citizen of that corporation or that sub corporation, because they're doing the same thing. They're taking people's money, and it's going to hurt people on a mass scale. But I don't suppose there's anywhere you can go in this world the way that it is when people decide what money is, and when people decide what wealth is, and then from there they can just do whatever they want. They can buy whoever they want, especially when they teach them and indoctrinate them into just the worst form of learning, the worst form of indoctrination that creates the debt slave, that creates the group of people that believe that they are better than everyone else. And from there, it just kind of continues to fester. And so you have what we have today, a group of people that believe that they've reached the pinnacle of their life, or they believe they reached a pinnacle of success, when in fact they have not even gotten halfway to whatever they were supposed to be, or whatever they could be, or whatever they could have done if given the right opportunity to say, I'm not going to your fucking prison. I'll teach myself how to read. I'll teach myself how to write. I'll teach myself how to add numbers and multiply them. And then I'll go off in any other direction I need to. But it has been a very, very meticulous plan designed to create workers, not thinkers, and those that parrot lies that they've remembered from, multiple choice tests. I'm going to play something here that really kind of it breaks down what these are, these organizations, and how far back it goes to be able to design, like designer people, if you will, to make. It's like I need 10 people to be able to run this organization. And it's not a good organization. It's going to do really, really bad things. So I need to educate people into, not understanding what right and wrong is. Redefining words and, well, let's just take a look at this.
Before 1852, American education consisted of one-room schoolhouses, independent teachers and students of all ages attending of their own free will. Curriculums and funding came directly from local communities without a federalized bureaucracy ruling over every facet like today. From 1852 to 1918, things changed as the government began pushing to enforce compulsory schooling laws all across America. These were coupled with new child labor laws in an effort to take children off the farms from under their families' tutelage and force them into indoctrination camps under the government's tutelage. These laws were met with strenuous opposition at every turn by the U.S. population, and unless there was an incredibly well-backed agenda to make sure such laws passed, they would not have. If it was simply a matter of what the people in individual states really wanted, child labor and compulsory schooling issues would have been dropped as soon as they were raised. As Edward Ross stated, plans are underway to replace community, family, and church with propaganda, education, and mass media. People are only little plastic lumps of human dough. And Elwood Cubberley said, "Each year the child is coming to belong more to the state and less to the parent." In his book, Public Education in the United States, Elwood Cubberley wrote, "At first, the laws were optional. Later, the law was made statewide, but the compulsory period was short, 10 to 12 weeks, and the age limits low, 9 to 12 years. After this, struggle came to extend the time, often little by little, to extend the age limits downward to 8 and 7, and upwards to 14, 15, or 16, to make the law apply to children attending private and parochial schools, and to require cooperation from such schools for the proper handling of cases, to institute state supervision of local enforcement, to connect school attendance enforcement with the child labor legislation of the state through a system of working permits. Once federalized mandatory schooling was employed countrywide, the compulsory attendance of 9 to 12-year-olds, 10 to 12 weeks a year, was incrementally lengthened to the point that nowadays 4-year-olds are entering preschools and 26-year-old doctors are still being indoctrinated almost the whole year long. Ironically, the longer students remain in their respective institutions, the more respect they are generally given in their field. Thus, our experts in medicine, science, technology, philosophy, economics, politics, etc. are generally those who have received the most government indoctrination. Elwood Cubberley wrote, Since 1900, and due more to the activity of persons concerned with social legislation and those interested in improving the moral welfare of children than to educators themselves, there has been a general revision of the compulsory education laws of our states, and the enactment of much new child welfare and anti-child labor legislation. These laws have brought into the schools not only the truant and the incorrigible, who under former conditions either left early or were expelled, but also many children who have no aptitude for book learning, and many children of inferior mental qualities who do not profit by ordinary classroom procedures. Our schools have come to contain many children who become a nuisance in the school and tend to demoralize school procedure. At the turn of the 20th century, Cubberley spoke of how children mechanically minded without aptitude for book learning or of inferior mental capacities became a nuisance in the school and tend to demoralize school procedure. At the turn of the 21st century, Bush continued pushing the idea of no child left behind, the complete opposite, which expands special ed at the expense of gifted and talented programs, promotes outcome-based education, an atrocious educational philosophy now being promoted, and furthers state control of your children. If you believe in the myth of a benevolent nanny state that looks out for your best interests from cradle to grave, no child left behind might fit well into your philosophy, but for independent individuals, lovers of freedom, this is the final step in government mind control. Helen Todd wrote, in 1909, a factory inspector did an informal survey of 500 working children in 20 factories. She found that 412 of them would rather work in the terrible conditions of the factories than return to school. David Tyack wrote, in one experiment in Milwaukee, for example, 8,000 youth were asked if they would return full-time to school if they were paid about the same wages as they earned at work. Only 16 said they would. California Education Administrator Elwood Cubberley was the main anti-establishment voice speaking out against the standardizing and enforcement of our schooling. The leading pro-establishment voice was U.S. Commissioner of Education William Torrey Harris. Listen to Harris's words from his 1906 The Philosophy of Education. 99 students out of 100 are automata, careful to walk in prescribed paths, careful to follow the prescribed custom. This is not an accident, but the result of substantial education, which, scientifically defined, is the subsumption of the individual. Is this a sane philosophy of education by anyone's standards? This is the man who gave America scientifically age-graded classrooms to replace the long successful practice of mixed-age schoolhouses. In The Philosophy of Education, Harris wrote his vision of the perfect classroom. The great purpose of school can be realized better in dark, airless, ugly places. It is to master the physical self, to transcend the beauty of nature. School should develop the power to withdraw from the external world. The first federalized education board was the 1870 founded NEA, National Education Administration, which quickly announced that countrywide school science courses must be restructured to teach evolution as fact, not theory. Having gained a fair amount of pull in the NEA, in 1903, John D. Rockefeller created the GEB, General Education Board, in an effort toward this goal of social control. Later, in 1923, he would also create the International Education Board, providing over $20 million to promote education abroad. The Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Ford groups have often funded and thus steered American education more so even than the government. John Taylor Gatto wrote, reading through the papers of the Rockefeller Foundation's General Education Board, an endowment rivaled in school policy influence in the first half of the 20th century only by Andrew Carnegie's various philanthropies, 7 curious elements force themselves on the careful reader. 1. There appears a clear intention to mold people through schooling. 2. There is a clear intention to eliminate tradition and scholarship. 3. The net effect of various projects is to create a strong class system verging on caste. 4. There is a clear intention to reduce mass critical intelligence while supporting infinite specialization. 5. There is clear intention to weaken parental influence. 6. There is clear intention to overthrow accepted custom. 7. There is striking congruency between the cumulative purposes of GEB projects and the utopian precepts of the oddball religious sect once known as perfectionism, a secular religion aimed at making the perfection of human nature, not salvation or happiness, the purpose of existence. The agenda of philanthropy, which had so much to do with the schools we got, turns out to contain an intensely political component. Gary Allen wrote, "One would assume that since the Rockefellers are thought of as capitalists, they would have used their fortune to foster the philosophy of individual liberty, but just the opposite is true. We have been unable to find a single project in the history of the Rockefeller Foundations which promotes free enterprise. Almost all of the Rockefeller grants have been used directly or indirectly to promote economic and social collectivism, i.e., socialism." Meyer Kutz wrote, "Philanthropy is the essential element in the making of Rockefeller power. It gives the Rockefellers a priceless reputation as public benefactors, which the public values so highly that power over public affairs is placed in the Rockefellers' hands. Philanthropy generates more power than wealth alone can provide." Rockefeller charity and philanthropy influences many sectors of society, from education to politics to religion. Here's an abridged list of Rockefeller-funded organizations: American Assembly, American Association for the United Nations, American Friends Service Committee, Atlantic Union, Center for Advanced Study in Behavioral Science, Center of Diplomacy and Foreign Policy, Citizens Committee for International Development, Committees on Foreign Relations, Committee for Economic Development, Council on Foreign Relations, Federation of World Governments, Foreign Policy Association, Institute of International Education, Institute for World Order, National Planning Association, U.S. National Commission, the Trilateral Commission, World Affairs Council, and the United World Federalists. Notice any trends? Any doubt regarding the Rockefellers' intent in starting the GEB should be clarified in John Dee's own mission statement, which reads, "In our dreams, people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The present education conventions of intellectual and character education fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of science. We have not to raise up from them authors, educators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task is simple. We will organize children and teach them in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way." This is not a man looking out for the best interest of students. You can get a good sense of his demeanor from statements like "yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands," and talking about creating a perfect system of state education better than imperfect parental education. Martin Luther King Jr., for one, disagrees with John D. Rockefeller, saying, "The group consisting of mother, father, and child is the main educational agency of mankind." Who do you agree with? Prior to World War I, in a speech to American businessmen, President Woodrow Wilson admitted similar goals as the Rockefellers, stating, "We want one class to have a liberal education. We want another class, a very much larger class, of necessity, to forego the privilege of a liberal education and fit themselves to perform specific, difficult manual tasks." In 1931, Paul Mantoux, in his Foreword to International Understanding, wrote, "And the builder of this new world must be education. Plainly, the first step in the case of each country is to train an elite to think, feel, and act internationally." In 1932, continuing their effort to change the philosophical goals of American education, the Rockefeller and Carnegie-dominated NEA created the EPC, Educational Policies Commission. Years later, the EPC put together its book, Education for All American Youth, which outlined federal programs for health, education, and welfare to be combined under one giant bureaucracy. It outlined preschool programs, sex education classes, and the removal of local control over educational issues, without seeming to do so. A 1934 NEA report advised, "A dying laissez-faire must be completely destroyed, and all of us, including the owners, must be subjected to a large degree of social control." So these education experts actually speak of themselves as owners and worry about falling under a large degree of the social control which they themselves implement. Walter Lippmann wrote in 1940, "The thesis I venture to submit to you is as follows, that during the past 40 or 50 years, those who are responsible for education have progressively removed from the curriculum of the studies the Western culture which produced the modern democratic state. That the schools and colleges have, therefore, been sending out into the world men who no longer understand the creative principle of the society in which they must live. That deprived of their cultural tradition, the newly educated Western men no longer possess in the form and substance of their own minds and spirits and ideas the premises, the rationale, the logic, the method, the values of the deposited wisdom which are the genius of the development of Western civilization. That the prevailing education is destined, if it continues, to destroy Western civilization, and is in fact destroying it. I realize quite well that this thesis constitutes a sweeping indictment of modern education, but I believe the indictment is justified, and here is a prima facie case for entering this indictment." In 1942, the Institute of Pacific Relations published Post-War Worlds. In it, P.E. Corbett wrote, "World government is the ultimate aim. It must be recognized that the law of nations takes precedence over national law. The process will have to be assisted by the deletion of the nationalistic material employed in educational textbooks and its replacement by material explaining the benefits of wiser association." In 1946, former editor of the NEA Journal, Joy Elmer, published The Teacher and World Government, saying things like, "In the struggle to establish an adequate world government, the teacher can do much to prepare the hearts and minds of children for global understanding and cooperation. At the very heart of all the agencies which will assure the coming of world government must stand the school, the teacher, and the organized profession." The next year, in 1947, the American Education Fellowship, organized by establishment minion John Dewey of the Dewey Decimal System, called for the establishment of a genuine world order, an order in which national sovereignty is subordinate to world authority. In October 1947, NEA Associate Secretary William Carr wrote in the NEA Journal that teachers should teach about the various proposals that have been made for the strengthening of the United Nations and the establishment of a world citizenship and a world government. Max Otto in 1949 wrote, "It was natural businessmen should devote themselves to something besides business, that they should seek to influence the enactment and administration of laws, national and international, and that they should try to control education." Elitist Committee of 300 philosopher Bertrand Russell, in his 1951 book, The Impact of Science on Society, wrote, "Education should aim at destroying free will, so that after pupils are thus schooled, they will be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. Influences of the home are obstructive, and in order to condition students, verses set to music and repeatedly intoned are very effective. It is for a future scientist to make these maxims precise and discover exactly how much it costs per head to make children believe that snow is black. When the technique has been perfected, every government that has been in charge of education for more than one generation will be able to control its subjects securely without the need of armies or policemen." In 1953, Carroll Reese, Tennessee congressman and chairman of the RNC, Republican National Committee, along with research director Norman Dodd and lawyer Renee Wormser, performed the first and only in-depth investigation into the activities of the Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Ford Foundations and their effect on American education. Renee Wormser wrote that the Reese investigation leads one to the conclusion that there was, indeed, something in the nature of an actual conspiracy among certain leading educators in the United States to bring about socialism through the use of our school systems. They discovered that the Rockefeller Foundation was the primary culprit behind the NEA's rapidly changing policies and the teaching of socialism in America's schools and universities. Wormser continued, "A very powerful complex of foundations and allied organizations has developed over the years to exercise a high degree of control over education. Part of this complex, and ultimately responsible for it, are the Rockefeller and Carnegie groups. During a personal meeting, President Rowan Gaither of the Ford Foundation told Reese Committee Research Director Norman Dodd that all of us here at the policy-making level of the Foundation have at one time or another served in the OSS, precursor to the CIA, or the European Economic Administration, operating under directives from the White House. We operate under those same directives. The substance under which we operate is that we shall use our grant-making power to so alter life in the United States that we can be comfortably merged with the Soviet Union. As their meeting turned from civil to threatening, Gaither warned Dodd, "If you proceed with the investigation as you have outlined, you will be killed." Fritz Springmeier wrote, "This was the situation in the 1950s when the Reese Committee briefly investigated. The Rockefeller-Carnegie groups have continued basically unopposed for the next 40 years in controlling education. One of the educational book producers is Grolier Inc. Avery Rockefeller Jr. sits on Grolier Inc.'s board meetings. Another interesting board member is Theodore Waller, who is the director of Grolier Inc. He was a member of the International Book Committee of UNESCO." In the mid-60s, the Education Department produced a document called Designing Education, which advised each state to lose its independent identity as well as its authority in order to form a partnership with the federal government. Another important document at the time was Benjamin Bloom's Taxonomy of Educational Objectives, which was used as a tool to classify the ways individuals are to act, think, or feel as the result of some unit of instruction. Using B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning and other new behavioral psychology models, American education shifted focus towards emotional and outcome-based learning, so-called values clarification, and sensitivity training. As noted by Ph.D. Superintendent of South St. Paul, Minnesota Schools, Ray Powell, in 1975, quote, "It's all brainwashing." In 1981, the NEA published the Special Committee on Instructional Technology report, which, as usual, addressed the public and children as lumps of clay to be molded to suit their will. In its coming involvement with the technology of instruction, the profession will be faced again with the challenge of leadership, by example and by effective communication, the challenge of convincing the public that education is much more than treating students like so many Pavlovian dogs to be conditioned and programmed into docile acceptance of a do-it-yourself blueprint of the good life. Through outcome-based learning and other sophisticated standardized mind control methods, which continue being refined to present day, our government schools are perpetually preparing a new workforce for job specialization. As Charlotte Iserby wrote in The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, outcome-based education, because it concentrates on an end product of its process, can be said to restrict the student's mental functioning. Success in an outcome-based environment is restricted to performing prescribed tasks to the point of automaticity. The functions of memory and creativity are not used, nor are they considered necessary to succeed in an OBE program or any program that uses Skinnerian mastery learning or direct instruction. Predictability is the bottom line for OBE, limiting the student to only those responses which are prescribed. When trained by OBE methodology, the student cannot fail unless he employs creativity and produces an unpredicted response. In an OBE environment, he can believe only that which is acceptable. The most predictable outcome, over time, is frustration, and ultimately, low achievement and behavior problems. John Taylor Gatto wrote in The Underground History of American Education, "Schools at present are the occupation of children. Children have become employees, pensioners of the government at an early age. But government jobs are frequently not really jobs at all. That certainly is the case in the matter of being a school child. There is nothing or very little to do in school, but one thing is demanded, that children must attend, condemned to hours of desperation, pretending to do a job that doesn't exist. At the end of the day, tired, fed up, full of aggression, their families feel the accumulated tedium of their pinched lives. Government jobs for children have broken the spirit of our people." During the Reagan administration, U.S. Department of Education's senior policy advisor was Camden, Maine School Board Director Charlotte Iserby. Iserby has long been an appreciated voice of opposition to outcome-based education and Skinnerian methodology. She recently compiled a mammoth informative expose of the devolution of American education called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. She explains how, quote, An alien collectivist socialist philosophy, much of which came from Europe, crashed onto the shores of our nation, bringing with it radical changes in economics, politics, and education, funded, surprisingly enough, by several wealthy American families and their tax-exempt foundations. The goal of these wealthy families and their foundations, a seamless, non-competitive global system for commerce and trade, when stripped of flowery expressions for concern for minorities, the less fortunate, etc., represented the initial stage of what this author now refers to as the deliberate dumbing down of America. 70 years later, the carefully laid plans to change America from a sovereign constitutional republic with a free enterprise economic base to just one of many nations in an international socialist collectivist system, New World Order, are apparent. Only a dumbed-down population with no memory of America's root as a prideful nation could be expected to willingly succumb to the global workforce training planned by the Carnegie Corporation and the John D. Rockefellers. John Taylor Gatto, author of The Underground History of American Education, was New York Teacher of the Year for the third time in 1991 when he quit his 30-year teaching career, saying that he was, quote, no longer willing to hurt children. He wrote, I feel ashamed that so many of us cannot imagine a better way to do things than locking children up all day in cells instead of letting them grow up knowing their families, mingling with the world, assuming real obligations, striving to be independent and self-reliant and free. I don't mean to be inflammatory, but it's as if government schooling made people dumber, not brighter, made families weaker, not stronger. The training field for these grotesque human qualities is the classroom. Schools train individuals to respond as a mass. Boys and girls are drilled in being bored, frightened, envious, emotionally needy, and generally incomplete. A successful mass production economy requires such a clientele. A small business, small farm economy like that of the Amish requires individual competence, thoughtfulness, compassion, and universal participation. Our own requires a managed mass of leveled, spiritless, anxious, familyless, friendless, godless, and obedient people who believe the difference between Cheers and Seinfeld is a subject worth arguing about. An executive director of the National Education Association announced that his organization expected to accomplish by education what dictators in Europe are seeking to do by compulsion and force. You can't get much clearer than that. World War II drove the project underground, but hardly retarded its momentum. Following cessation of global hostilities, school became a major domestic battleground for the scientific rationalization of social affairs through compulsory indoctrination. It is very important for both governments and corporations that schools constantly churn out unquestioning, uninformed sheeple crushed of creativity and individuality who are emotionally needy, respond in groupthink patterns, and find their only reprieve in materialism and advertising. As Gerald Bracey, leading promoter of government schooling, wrote in his 1991 annual report to business clients, quote, "We must continue to produce an uneducated social class." Lifetime Learning Systems, a new corporation helping advertisers infiltrate our schools, said to its clients, quote, "School is the ideal time to influence attitudes, build long-term loyalties, introduce new products, test market, promote sampling and trial usage, and above all, to generate immediate sales." Suzanne Cornforth of Paschal and Associates Public Relations Consultants was quoted in the New York Times on July 15, 1998, saying, "Today's corporate sponsors want to see their money used in ways to line up with business objectives. This is a young generation of corporate sponsors, and they have discovered the advantages of building long-term relationships with educational institutions." John Taylor Gatto wrote, "The secret of American schooling is that it doesn't teach the way children learn, and it isn't supposed to. School was engineered to serve a concealed command economy and a deliberately re-stratified social order. It wasn't made for the benefit of kids and families, as those individuals and institutions would define their own needs. School is the first impression children get of organized society. Like most first impressions, it is the lasting one. Life, according to school, is dull and stupid. Only consumption promises relief. Coke, Big Macs, fashion jeans, that's where real meaning is found. That is the classroom's lesson. However, indirectly delivered. Advertising, public relations, and stronger forms of quasi-religious propaganda are so pervasive in our schools, even in alternative schools, that independent judgment is suffocated in mass-produced secondary experiences and market-tested initiatives. Scientifically subjecting young children to factory-style seating, standardized testing, and government textbooks bring order out of chaos and make for manageable populations. Modern schools create uniformity while suppressing skepticism and creativity. They overdevelop competitive spirit while undermining compassion and curiosity. They promote cliques, gangs, small group mentalities, and small picture thinkers. Grading and testing procedures hinder big-picture understanding of any subject and force students to focus on more simple, gradable aspects. True education and mastery of the subjects at hand are not encouraged or even feasible. Students are merely required to memorize trivial information like names, dates, places, events, etc., just long enough to regurgitate for standardized multiple-choice tests. Then, after examination, the trivial info stored in their short-term memory disappears along with their superficial understandings of each subject. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "We are students of words. We are shut up in schools and colleges and recitation rooms for 10 or 15 years and come out at last with a bag of wind, a memory of words, and do not know a thing." H. L. Mencken wrote, "That erroneous assumption is to the effect that the aim of public education is to fill the young of the species with knowledge and awaken their intelligence, and so make them fit to discharge the duties of citizenship in an enlightened and independent manner. Nothing could be further from the truth. The aim of public education is not to spread enlightenment at all. It is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed and train a standardized citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. That is its aim, in the United States, whatever the pretensions of politicians, pedagogues, and other such mountebanks, and that is its aim everywhere else." John Stuart Mill wrote, "A general state education is a mere contrivance for molding people to be exactly like one another, and as the mold in which it casts them is that which pleases the predominant power in the government, it establishes a despotism over the mind." David Icke wrote, "The Brotherhood has also structured the education system and the media to lock people in what I call the left brain prison. The left brain is the area which deals with the physical worldview, rational thought, and all that can be seen, touched, heard, and smelt. The right brain is our intuition and our connection with higher dimensions. This is where you find the artist and creativity, inspired by our uniqueness of thought and expression. The education system and its offshoots, like the media and science, are designed to speak to the left brain and to switch off right brain thinking. This is why spending on the arts in schools is being cut back all over the world and rigid left brain programs imposed. Education fills the left brain with information, much of which is untrue and inaccurate, and it demands that this is stored and then regurgitated on the exam paper. If you do this like a robot, you pass. If, however, you filter the information through the right brain and say, 'Hey, this is a piece of shit,' you won't pass, even though you will be telling the truth. Isn't education just wonderful? It has been demonstrated if you read the brain waves of a typical American, left brain neurons are constantly more active than the right. And with the constant suppression of creativity and right brain sympathies, we crank out a population of students who want to be musicians, actors, artists, painters, and poets, but are forced into the real-world jobs of accounting, business, economics, advertising, etc." Bertrand Russell wrote, "What's the difference between a bright, inquisitive 5-year-old and a dull, stupid 19-year-old? 14 years of the British educational system." Vladimir Lenin wrote, "Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted." Joseph Stalin wrote, "Education is a weapon, whose effect depends on who holds it in his hands and at whom it is aimed." Winston Churchill wrote, "Schools have not necessarily much to do with education. They are mainly institutions of control, where basic habits must be inculcated in the young. Education is quite different, and has little place in school." Isabel Patterson wrote, "A tax-supported, compulsory educational system is the complete model of the totalitarian state." Every day, all over the world, millions of bright young minds are spending the best years of their lives being herded around by governments like cattle, responding to bells, whistles, and other Pavlovian and Skinnerian conditioning. Millions of children are locked into this program Monday to Friday from 9 to 5, performing boring and arduous tasks against their will because society has deemed it necessary. Just like the workplace, only unquestioning compliance is rewarded, and your only reprieves are snack breaks and lunchtime, which are withheld from you like salivating dogs until the bell rings. Meanwhile, you anxiously sit in rigid rows, all facing the big boss at the blackboard, focused on fantasy objectives, conditioned to view other students as competitors and hindrances. John Taylor Gatto wrote, "By bells and other concentration-destroying technology, schools teach that nothing is worth finishing because some arbitrary power intervenes both periodically and aperiodically. Love of learning can't survive this steady drill. Students are taught to work for little favors and ceremonial grades which correlate poorly with their actual ability. By addicting children to outside approval and nonsense rewards, schools make them indifferent to the real power and potential that inheres and self-discovery reveals. Schools alienate the winners as well as the losers. By stars, checks, smiles, frowns, prizes, honors, and disgraces, schools condition children to lifelong emotional dependency. It's like training a dog. The reward-punishment cycle, known to animal trainers from antiquity, is the heart of a human psychology distilled in the late 19th century, Leipzig, and incorporated thoroughly into scientific management revolution of the early 20th century in America. Half a century later, by 1968, it had infected every school system in the United States. Each day, schools reinforce how absolute and arbitrary power really is by granting and denying access to fundamental needs for toilets, water, privacy, and movement. In this way, basic human rights, which usually require only individual volition, are transformed into privileges not to be taken for granted. School teaches how hopeless it is to resist because you are always watched. There is no place to hide, nor should you want to. Your avoidance behavior is actually a signal you should be watched even more closely than the others. Privacy is a thought crime. School sees to it that there is no private time, no private space, no minute uncommanded, no desk free from search, no bruise not inspected by medical policing or the counseling arm of thought patrols. Marvin Minsky wrote, "It seems to me that much of what we call education is really socialization. Consider what we do to our kids. Is it really a good idea to send your 6-year-old into a room full of 6-year-olds, and then the next year to put your 7-year-old in a room full of 7-year-olds, and so on? A simple recursive argument suggests this exposes them to a real danger of all growing up with the minds of 6-year-olds. And, so far as I can see, that's exactly what happens. Our present culture may be largely shaped by this strange idea of isolating children's thought from adult thought. Perhaps the way our culture educates its children better explains why most of us come out as dumb as they do than it explains how some of us come out as smart as they do." William Damon wrote, "There has never in the history of the civilized world been a cohort of kids that is so little affected by adult guidance and so attuned to a peer world. We have removed grown-up wisdom and allowed them to drift into a self-constructed, highly relativistic world of friendship and peers." John Gatto wrote, "Don't let a world of funny animals, dancing alphabet letters, pastel colors, and preachy music suffocate your little boy or girl's consciousness at exactly the moment when big questions about the world beckon. Funny animals were invented by social engineers. They knew something important about fantasy and social engineering that you should teach yourself. Does all this age-graded, childish edutainment serve to make education more fun or more trivial and superficial? As cute as they may be, are Disney, Barney, Sesame Street, and others what is best for our children? Are textbooks with bright color pictures helpful or distracting?" Thomas Hodgkin wrote, "Men had better be without education than be educated by their rulers." Leo Tolstoy wrote, "Take at hazard 100 children of several educated generations and 100 uneducated children of the people, and compare them in anything you please, in strength, in agility, in mind, in the ability to acquire knowledge, even in morality, and in all respects you are startled by the vast superiority on the side of the children of the uneducated." George Bernard Shaw wrote, "My schooling not only failed to teach me what it professed to be teaching, but prevented me from being educated to an extent which infuriates me when I think of all I might have learned at home by myself." John Taylor Gatto wrote, "Samuel Johnson entered a note into his diary several hundred years ago about the powerful effect reading Hamlet was having upon him. He was 9 at the time. Abraham Cowley wrote of his infinite delight with Spenser's Faerie Queene, an epic poem that treats moral values allegorically in 9-line stanzas that never existed before Spenser, and hardly since. He spoke of his pleasure with its stories of knights and giants and monsters and brave houses. Cowley was 12 at the time. It couldn't have been an easy read in 1630 for anyone, and it's beyond the reach of many elite college graduates today. What happened? The answer is that Dick and Jane happened. Frank had a dog. His name was Spot. That happened. There are many ways to burn books without a match. You can order the reading of childish books to be substituted for serious ones, as we have done. You can simplify the language you allow in school books to the point that students become disgusted with reading because it demeans them, being thinner gruel than their spoken speech. We have done that too. One subtle and very effective strategy is to fill books with pictures and lively graphics so they trivialize words in the same fashion the worst tabloid newspapers do, forcing pictures and graphs into space where readers should be building pictures of their own, preempting space into which personal intellect should be expanding. In this, we are the world's master. George Washington attended only 2 years of formal schooling in his life. Abraham Lincoln had only 50 weeks of schooling, and even that was seen as a waste of his time by his relatives. In 1840, the rate of complex literacy in the U.S. was incredibly high, between 93 and 100%. The Connecticut census showed only 1 of every 579 people was illiterate. Over a century and a half later, in 1993, the National Adult Literacy Survey reported that 1 in every 5 Americans was illiterate. The 1993 survey represented 190 million U.S. adults over age 16 with an average school attendance of 12.4 years. 42 million were completely illiterate. 50 million read at a 4th to 5th grade level. 55 to 60 million read at a 6th to 8th grade level. 30 million at a 9th to 10th grade level. And less than 10 million at a university level. Sir Walter Scott wrote, "All men who have turned out worth anything have had the chief hand in their own education." John Taylor Gatto wrote, "In 1882, 5th graders read these authors in their Appleton school reader: William Shakespeare, Henry Thoreau, George Washington, Sir Walter Scott, Mark Twain, Benjamin Franklin, Oliver Wendell Holmes, John Bunyan, Daniel Webster, Samuel Johnson, Lewis Carroll, Thomas Jefferson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and others like them." In 1995, a student teacher of 5th graders in Minneapolis wrote to the local newspaper, "I was told children are not to be expected to spell the following words correctly: back, big, call, came, can, day, did, dog, down, get, good, have, he, home, if, in, is, it, like, little, man, morning, mother, my, night, off, out, over, people, play, ran, said, saw, she, some, soon, there, them, there, time, to, up, us, very, water, we, went, where, when, will, would, etc. Is this nuts? Dr. Seuss, the children's author, wrote many bestsellers, admittedly using a controlled scientific vocabulary supplied by his publisher. He said in a 1981 interview that, "I did it for a textbook house, and they sent me a word list. That was due to the Dewey Revolt in the 20s, in which they threw out phonics reading and went to a word recognition, as if you're reading a Chinese pictograph instead of blending sounds or different letters. I think killing phonics was one of the greatest causes of illiteracy in the country." Anyway, they had it all worked out that a healthy child at the age of 4 can only learn so many words in a week. So there were 223 words to use in this book. I read the list 3 times, and I almost went out of my head. I said I'll read it once more, and if I can find 2 words that rhyme, that'll be the title of my book. I found cat and hat, and said the title of my book will be The Cat in the Hat. Richard Mitchell wrote, "Far from failing in its intended task, our educational system is in fact succeeding magnificently, because its aim is to keep the American people thoughtless enough to go on supporting the system."
All right, so that kind of puts things in perspective. Molds people into thinking that they've achieved something when they really have not. Or achieved just enough that was expected. So I wanted to play this one as well here.
Russia would probably be very much like a Hitler sympathizer. Here's how it went.
Vladimir Putin hates us. He is malevolent. And he is as close to pure evil as I can find. He's also brilliant. And so I don't understand why any American would want an alliance with Russia. He's a killer.
Hard to see why he's a threat to us. And how many wars can we fight at once? How many people can we be in opposition to at once? Why not just accept that people who are bad people share our interests and side with them?
You sound like Charles Lindbergh in 1938 saying Hitler hasn't attacked us.
I beg your pardon? Slow down. Hey, slow down, Colonel. I'm not in any way. You cannot compare me to someone who would make apologies for Hitler. And I don't think Putin is comparable to Hitler.
I think Putin is. Look,
I think it's a grotesque overstatement.
Putin, he assassinates dissidents and journalists. He bombs women and children on purpose in Syria. He is as bad as Hitler. And yet you want us to align with the Russians, with Iran, with Assad.
I want us to act in America's interest and stop making shallow, sweeping moral claims about countries we don't fully understand and then hope everything will be fine in the end. If a country we don't like takes active steps to kill people who are a threat to us, I'm going to pause and applaud. Well, Peters is not alone in holding that view. You hear it all the time here in Washington. CNN analyst Robert Baer recently suggested anyone seeking collaboration with Russia on national security questions would have joined the Axis 75 years ago.
Clearly, the country that attacked us in the 2016 elections, you can't go into business with them. It is truly like, working with the Japanese after Pearl Harbor to, defend Hawaii, the air defense. It's just nutty.
Max Boot is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. He says he agrees with what Lieutenant Colonel Peters said last night, and he joins us tonight. Max, thanks a lot for coming on. Now, I think it's fair.
Me, Tucker.
I think it's fair to disagree about whether or not cooperating with Russia in the fight against ISIS is a good idea. But to dismiss anyone who doesn't share your view as a Nazi sympathizer seems cheap and a shortcut and not really befitting a self-described genius like yourself. Why would you say something like that?
Well, rest assured, Tucker, I'm not actually saying that you're a Nazi sympathizer. And the one thing that I would disagree with Colonel Peters about is I don't think that Putin is comparable to Adolf Hitler because there was only one Hitler. But what I do believe is that Mitt Romney was right. I was a foreign policy advisor on the Mitt Romney campaign in 2012 when he said that Putin is the number one geopolitical threat that we face. I think that's true today. And I'm very disturbed, Tucker, when I see you at the top of the show, you and Mark Stein, yucking it up over the fact that Putin is interfering and meddling in our election process, undermining the sanctity of our elections to try to get Donald Trump elected, and that Donald Trump Jr., when he's told that Putin's government wants to support the Trump campaign, he doesn't pick up the phone to the FBI. He says, I love it. That, to me, is very disturbing. But what's even more disturbing is that you don't think it is disturbing.
Point by point here. First of all, I'm sorry that laughter disturbs you. And you can debate whether or not
this is not funny,
Donald
Tucker.
Trump,
I'm sorry. This is an assault on our democracy.
I get your view there, Max. You can debate whether or not what he did is a crime or falls under the Espionage Act or not. But to dismiss people who disagree with you as immoral, which is your habit, isn't a useful form of debate. It's a kind of moral preening. And it's a little odd coming from you, who really has been consistently wrong in the most flagrant and flamboyant way for over a decade. And so you have to sort of wonder, like,
what have I been wrong about, Tucker? What have I been wrong about?
Having watched you carefully and known you for a long time, I recall vividly when you said that if we were to topple the governments of Afghanistan and Iraq, the region would be much safer, and the people who took their place would help us in the global war on terror. Of course, it didn't happen. I was there when you said that.
On me, Tucker.
I'm not getting holier than thou. I'm merely saying
you supported the invasion of Iraq.
You have been consistently wrong, and many people have been wrong. I've been wrong about a ton of things, but you try to learn your lesson. But when you get out there in the New York Times and say we really should have done more to depose Gaddafi because Libya is going to be better when that happens. And then to hear you say we need to knock off the Assad regime and things will be better in Syria, you sort of wonder, like, well, maybe you should choose another profession, selling insurance, house painting, something you're good at. I guess that's kind of the point. Is there no sanction
Tucker,
for being as wrong as you
have? I would be happy to hold up my record of foreign policy prognostication against yours. And by the way, to underline the fact, you You supported the Iraq War, and then when it went bad, you opposed it, which doesn't take any moral courage or perspicacity.
No, I actually began to oppose it when I went there, when it began, and saw that it wasn't working.
Right now, you are supporting Donald Trump, and you're laughing about the fact that Russia is interfering in our election process. That,
so you're
to
making
me, is immoral.
Okay, so let's have it's immoral, not just a disagreement. It's immoral. You're a moral authority, a religious figure now, actually casting moral aspersions on those who disagree.
Save your sarcasm, okay?
It's heartfelt. It's not sarcasm. I have contempt
a repudiation
for your
of all of the conservative movement in the Republican Party.
Let me ask you.
When I was growing up, Ronald Reagan warned about the evil empire.
Okay,
right now, you're yucking it up at the evil empire.
It's a different empire, Max. And actually, we can debate to what extent
Vladimir Putin is a former KGB man, and you're applauding what he's doing.
Since you have some sinecure at the Council on Foreign Relations, let me ask you policy questions, if I can, just for 1 second.
It's not as lucrative as your sinecure at Fox News, Tucker.
Let me ask you a question. If we were to follow the course of action you're suggesting we follow, you're demanding we follow on moral grounds, having, as I said,
what course of action is that?
Which is to get rid of the Assad regime because you fear his presence will empower Iran, which you see as a major problem in the world. What would happen then? Who would run that country? I asked Ralph Peters that question last night. He said the Kurds. Do you think the Kurds would run Syria once we depose Bashar al-Assad?
No, I don't. I think it'd be very difficult to do now in any case. I think it should have been done in 2011, 2012, when you would have had a free Syrian army, the moderate Syrians come to the fore.
What do you think we should do now?
What's your advice, Tucker? Should we collaborate with Russia in committing war crimes in Syria? Is that your advice in furthering Iranian hegemony over Syria, a country that is dedicated to death to America? Is that your advice at the moment?
Yeah, I think you're not
I was very opposed to the Obama policy, and I'm opposed to the Trump policy.
Well, you
but you seem to be a cheerleader for allowing the Russians and the Iranians to do whatever they want in Syria.
I'm a cheerleader for Russia and Iran. This is exactly the style of debate that prevents people from taking you seriously.
Am I wrong,
Because
Tucker?
rather than I'm cheerleading for Iran and Russia, it's a grotesque thing. Of course I'm not. But I wouldn't live in either country. I disapprove of their policies.
You don't think that we should make common cause with Russia in Syria,
that
as you said repeatedly?
Let me ask you this.
That viewpoint?
Let me ask you this, since you're, I think, also a historian. The Congress of the United States in 1941 voted for Lend-Lease, which sent billions and billions of dollars to Joseph Stalin in armaments and food because the Congress of the United States believed Hitler was a greater threat than Stalin. Were they Stalinists when they did that?
You know, Tucker, this pure sophistry on your part.
It's not sophistry. It's a sincere question. Why don't you answer
Will you let me finish? Will you let me answer your question, Tucker? Do not share common goals with Russia. We do not share common goals with Russia because Russia is trying to further the murderous Bashar Assad regime. They are trying to further Iranian hegemony in Syria. That is not our goal. Okay. Iran believes in death to Israel. They believe in death to America. We should not be cooperating with them. We should not become complicit in Russian war crimes.
Okay, let me just ask you factual questions. And
Russia, by the way, is also undermining our electoral process, which you don't seem to care about, Tucker.
Okay, the moral preening and the generalizations are tiresome. Let me ask you a specific question. You say,
your lack of moral judgment is tiresome to me. Your lack of moral judgment about what Russia is up to, I find to be offensive.
This is why nobody takes you seriously. But I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourself by answering this question. You say
Tucker,
Iran is a primary threat to us.
You're the one who's not taken seriously.
Tell me how many Americans in the United States have been murdered by terrorists backed by Iran since 9/11.
Oh, so you're taking the pro-Iranian line, essentially. Is that right?
What about the fact that hundreds of American troops... You're humiliating yourself, Max. Hundreds
of American troops have been murdered in Iraq by Iran and its proxies. I also recall that in the 1980s, hundreds of American Marines were murdered in Beirut by Iran. Do you not care about those deaths, Tucker?
Do I not care about those deaths? It's almost impossible to have a conversation with you because your responses are so childish. Of course I care about the deaths. I'm trying to get to the right answer.
Tucker, are ridiculous, okay?
I'm trying to get to what the best thing for the United States to do is.
That we don't need to be worried about Iran.
Of course I'm not arguing. Oh, slow down. I'm not arguing a pro-Iranian line. I'm not pro-Iran. I'm not pro-Russia. And I'm certainly not arguing that Iran is a good place or doesn't pose a threat to the United States. I'm merely saying,
so what are you arguing, Tucker?
Let me tell you, in a world full of threats, you create a hierarchy of them. You decide which is the worst, and then you go down the list. And my only question to you is,
right up there. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that Russia is a threat to us?
I think the idea that Russia is in the top 5 is absurd, and it makes me wonder about your judgment. But I'm giving you a chance to answer the question, which is,
it's absurd for you to say that Russia is not in the top 5. They're the only country that can destroy us with a nuclear strike.
I'm beginning to think that your judgment has been clouded by ideology. I don't fully understand where it's coming from, but I'll let our viewers decide.
Tucker, I think your judgment has been clouded by ratings because you feel compelled to be a spokesman for Donald Trump in order to win ratings on the Fox News channel.
That's pretty funny. I actually vehemently disagreed with our airstrikes, in Syria.
I think you're
and the president called for them, and I'm against them. I'm actually arguing principle, but more than anything, I'm arguing for the right to ask honest questions without being denounced as a quisling. But you are incapable of giving a factual answer, and so instead you attack the character of the person who asked the question. And I think our viewers can see that,
Tucker,
and it's beneath contempt.
I did not.
Max,
I did not attack.
I gave you a chance, and you did not turn in in any sense, impressive performance. Thanks for joining us anyway. I thought it was interesting.
All right, so that guy Max Boot is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a spinoff of one of many of the Rockefeller Foundation and the Rockefeller family, the Rockefeller fortune, which was also largely complicit in the creation of the education system in America and what it is and the failure that it is largely. So, you know, I was never really a fan of Tucker Carlson, and I just kind of watch news, and it's easier to kind of watch it's easier to watch Fox News on some level, listening to him, because he really does have the ability to be able to listen to people and then to be able to kind of make a decent kind of judgment as far as where, you know, what is absurd and what is not. You know, he has many confrontations on his program because he brings people on, and then he kind of allows them to just kind of get on there and show how ridiculous the ideology is. Now, with the Council on Foreign Relations, this guy being a senior fellow and then demonizing not only Russia and demonizing Iran and many other different countries that have been wholly fucking raped by the international banking system, which we are part of, Libya being raped and destroyed. You look at this, and I think Tucker had it right. He looked at all of the decisions that this guy made, which it goes in tandem with all of the other people that are members of the Council on Foreign Relations, which you don't really see whether they are or not. When they're on television, it doesn't say, senator of this state and member of the Council on Foreign Relations. But they all have this absolute narrow vision that is moving us towards a World War III, the hot World War III that is inevitable. And so listening to this Boot guy just humiliate himself. But this is what we're taught. This is what we're taught in America. We're taught lies about history. I mean, even Alex Jones has said any number of times that we should apologize to Russia for what for what fucking happened there. The Bolshevik Revolution there, where they were just absolutely murdered. A country murdered, just like Germany murdered by. And of course, people don't have the ability to really the discernment to be able to say if I say that a country like Russia murdered, a country like Germany murdered, okay, because in the eyes of the educated American or the educated so-called educated British English commoner, okay, Hitler bad, everybody else bad, okay? So that they all suffer because of something that one of their leaders at one point in history did or may have done. Okay? So the collective punishment, okay, which is exactly what you see when you're dealing with the apartheid that's going on over in the Middle East with Palestine, Gaza, and Israel there. Okay, so collective punishment has throughout history kind of gone through this, insidiously gone through, and people just accept that, hey, if somebody like you commits a crime, or somebody from your country commits a crime or something, you are you're pretty much at fault as well. So the U.S. media has lied about the Ukraine, has lied about Crimea, an incredible sum of money was spent to destabilize, by the West, to destabilize Crimea, Ukraine, Crimea, the whole region there, to destabilize whatever, to destabilize and or destroy whatever links or progress that we've made, that the U.S. has made with Russia. Okay. But the average American has no fucking clue that has taken place. That we can do no wrong. Other countries can do all the wrong, and as what Tucker said, should we follow your design, Max? Should we follow what you said? Because Libya, you said go into Libya and then Libya will be better off. No, they're not. And the way that Libya is right now is an absolute success. You've heard O'Keefe say it any number of times as well, that failures are success. If you look at Iraq being a failure, well, then it's the opposite day. So if Iraq is a failed state now as a result of what the U.S. did, or Afghanistan is a failed state, that's a success to the system. Because going in there and doing anything good that's going to make anything good happen for Iraq or Syria or any of these countries, that is a no-no. It's an absolute no-no. Now, Syria, like Max said, they should have done it in 2011 or 2012. They've not been able to. So we're over there helping, or we are assisting our deep state here with what's going on with the regime change that Wesley Clark spoke about, 7 countries in 5 years. And that was around 2001. So here we are 3 times the amount of time. 3 times the amount. So 7 countries they were going to go into militarily, whatever level, Iraq being one, Afghanistan, Iraq, I wonder if Libya was one, Syria. I mean, just you got a couple of northern African countries there that were part of it. Libya being part of northern Africa. So these were already established, and there's just no making sense of any of it. And of course, we have psychopaths like this Max Boot, and he's the rule, not the exception over there. And so it's inevitable what is going to happen. What do we get here? What do we have here? We have impeachment processes triggered, and media just lying. Just chaos, just absolute polarization across the board. And Washington, just people, the Democrats, they just want to keep on. They just want to keep on saying and blah, blah, blah. They just want to keep on vomiting out. And then one thing that I saw, I was listening to this morning. Let's see if we can find that. With the health care, I want to say that it was, Phil Donahue, darkest political moment in history. So they pull Phil Donahue out, and then just want you to listen to the indoctrination that is that he, as soon as this fucking website clears up. All right, so check it out. So Phil Donahue is on there with this Joy woman. Who is, editor, but just listen to the conversation. And in no way am I saying that Trump doesn't deserve, some of the things that have happened. I didn't vote for him. I didn't vote. I'm not, I took the George Carlin route. Okay. No voting. I stay home. Okay. We don't even get off that day. On election day. At least maybe every 4 years, maybe we should have off on election day so that we can, vote for, our next leader, our next bloodline representative in the White House. Okay. But we don't get that. How is it that it's supposed to be one of the most important things that we do, yet we are all working on that Tuesday to be able to not, either vote in the morning, vote at night, just chaos. So they create chaos because ultimately they don't want you to vote. But just give you an idea here of Phil Donahue and his brainwashing, along with this pathetic woman, Joy, who her shenanigans and just detachment from reality has been duly noted. But of course, another MSNBC where you get your Rachel Maddow and all these other people that have no fucking clue how wrong and deceived. How wrong they are about history, how deceived they are about the world that they live in. But they're making money, so they're prostitutes. And I don't even think it would matter to them if they knew the truth. They would continue to do what they do because they're prostitutes.
Did the New York Military Academy do that for you, or were you always like that?
I think, and maybe this is a part of the book and what's happening, I think that people tend to be what they are. If people really have it or they don't have it.
People tend to be what they are. One of the most enduring television personalities, some might call him the father of daytime talk shows, interviewed Donald Trump 30 years ago, just after the release of The Art of the Deal. And joining me now is the great Phil Donahue.
I look like I just made my first communion.
Well, I'm both excited and intimidated. So thank you for being here. It has been a real, dream come true to get you on the show. But I want to ask you about that interview. So you interviewed Donald Trump in 1987.
He was on the show 3 times.
He was on the show 3 times. But this interview came in a very interesting year, in my view, in Donald Trump's life. He was really pushing the Reagan administration to make him some sort of Russian ambassador. He styled himself a potential future president. When you spoke to him back then, did you see a potential future president? Someone in your audience even
Are you serious?
Yeah. Did you think he could run?
Oh, not even in a million years. Well, who did? Yeah, I thought he was a hot dog. And I kind of gave him a little stiff arm. I said on that interview, I think I like your father better than you. But he held up all right. I wasn't nasty or mean. But he reached out. He worked hard he collected celebrities and made a lot of noise and got his name on a lot of buildings.
Yep.
And where were we when that happened?
Yeah.
I mean, why didn't you think of that, Joy?
Well, it's interesting because I feel.
I want to point out, like when she said, did he seem like he would be like a future president or something? Oh, God, no. So, like, what do we have we have this fantasy that these presidents of the past, that there have been some kind of these people with incredible integrity, these people that had no skeletons in their closet, these people that have done everything right, pious, the whole fucking thing across the board. But when we talk about presidency, when we talk about Barack Obama, we talk about George Bush, okay? Finally, now that we have some kind of with Trump being elected, we have this this false understanding that this is the darkest political moment in history. Donald Trump being the president of the United States, but all the thing about American history is that all of it is a lie. Some more manipulated than others. So we really truly have a population of people, and these people are so-called journalists. They think that they have some level, this incredible level of fucking understanding that sets them aside from regular people. You're the dumbest fucking people telling us, the commoners, that we have no idea what we're doing. And you'll hear that further as you listen to what Phil Donahue says about the people. What does that say about the people that elected him? And he starts to really, truly insult Americans, and they need to be insulted. Okay, that's the truth. But who is he to be the fucking one to say this? This prostitute that was, like she said, the father of talk shows. It's ridiculous. And then she starts fucking blowing him because of this particular status that he has and what he's achieved. I tell you, the only thing that he achieves is he still has all this fucking hair at his age, and he doesn't even look like he's really aged that much. I mean, honestly, when you look at the young Phil Donahue, and now he's even more indoctrinated with lies and just shit. So what's the thing they say about computers? Garbage in, garbage out. And that's what our society is. Garbage in, garbage out. And the people at the very top that have created this system are the ones that have true knowledge about the world, true knowledge about things. And they're not even Their goal is to keep that and all of that away from you. And this is what we're left with. Joy, the retard, and Phil Donahue, the fucking ancient retard.
When people say, well, Donald Trump has changed so much, to me, he seems the same. If you go back to the 80s and you listen to him talk to him, you listen to him talk now, he's sort of the same guy. And one of the ways he's the same is that he did have this emphasis, and you talked to him about loyalty. I want to play another clip of it, and this is about Donald Trump's loyalty. And this was a question you asked him about Roy Cohn, the infamous Roy Cohn, being his lawyer during that federal case that the Nixon administration brought for racial discrimination in his father's buildings. Take a listen.
Loyal. And loyalty is a great trait. In my opinion, it's a great trait. It's a trait that maybe can cause problems, but it's also a great trait.
Right. So now you see this guy demanding loyalty from Jim Comey, demanding loyalty, his son essentially trying to take the fall for him. What do you make of it?
Same old.
Yeah.
He's very, and he can't handle, obviously, anyone who disagrees.
Right.
How about the cabinet meeting where everybody, like bobbleheads, am I great? Am I great? Yes, you are.
Yeah.
I mean, that was icky. I mean, anybody who was capable of that and didn't see
icky
the horror of demanding this kind of public proclamations of loyalty and just total fidelity to the king.
Yeah. And, one of the things,
he is the king,
I guess
of
the media
United
missed
States.
During the campaign that you
That's
had to
what
sort of be a
get.
Trump supporter to get, is that he did, even back in the 1980s, make this appeal to a certain kind of American who feels put upon by foreigners, put upon by, people of color, whatever it is they're put upon by. And this is Donald Trump back in 1987 talking about Japan and other countries ripping off the country. Take a listen.
Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, they're ripping off this country, and I don't like seeing it. Other countries have to pay us for the services we're rendering, or this country is going to go right down the tubes.
That is no different than his campaign appeal. It's no different.
And that's a very...
So we are getting ripped off. They're allowing, the political body is allowing all these things to happen, okay? But they're not going to address that. They're not going to address the true inequality and the consolidation of power that's even gotten worse. They're not going to address that. They just want to attack Donald Trump for basically saying, yeah, we are being ripped off. We are, but yeah, let's not talk about reality. Let's just divide. Let's just divide each other with every conversation.
Variation on the theme that I think earned him so much voting power, enough to become president. He would go to these, I wondered who were these people under the, they raised when he walks out in the big rallies, and they have their iPhones up here, taking his picture, and you can see the back. Who were these people? And I, slow learner that I am, and I think mainstream elite media, as he would say, also missed this story. These were people.
They missed the story.
Who work hard, aren't sure their company isn't going to be sold.
They missed the story.
Kids can't get a job. They're home watching ESPN. They're they can't get the minimum wage raised.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Let's mix that shit in.
And he comes out in that rally.
But the media missed the story that kids are going to college, young people are going to college, and they're coming out and they can't get jobs. They missed the story about the economy. No, they've been covering up for the deterioration of the economy for Obama. And, of course, Bush as well. Okay, so you guys, again, caught in another senior moment there, Phil. Okay, now let's talk about the people that realize that the country is being destroyed. And who are they? Who are these deplorables, right? So basically what he's saying is, these deplorables.
Clapping. Mm-hmm. And he says, you're being ripped off. And these people said, yes. And that was what put him in the White House. And I think the so-called, as he would call it, mainstream media largely missed that story.
Yeah.
Not Bernie, but most of the mainstream media really didn't get that.
And now that everyone's caught up and realized that, oh yeah, he definitely has a strong appeal to them, do you think there's anything that could break Trump voters from him? There's a recent piece out in which a Trump voter says, well, I guess if he killed someone in cold blood, I'd change my mind.
I mean, it's all, well, he can shoot a gun down Fifth Avenue, right?
Yeah, and get away with it. It seems like
and all of a sudden we got a crotch grabber for a president. This is the darkest political moment in American history. There you go. Who's going to argue that?
And I'm wondering, too, because, one of the things about that period in the 80s was there was a certain sort of Dallas and dynasty culture. There was this sort of love of celebrity. The Reagan sort of gave off that era. And Donald Trump, this is Donald Trump also in your interview talking about his book sales, because The Art of the Deal had come out, which Tony Schwartz actually wrote, but that he took credit for. This is Donald Trump talking about his book sales.
The front page of the Wall Street Journal today tells us that they're printing 150,000 copies. Tweaked your cheek a bit. You said there were 200. Exaggerating, Mr. Haidt.
No, I'll tell you truthfully, I thought it was 200, and I think it will be 200, but I'm not sure what it is. I don't know what it is exactly. It's 150 to 200,000, I guess.
Hyping and lying, two things that, again, have also not changed. Do you think deep down that maybe in the id of a lot of Americans, they kind of like a hype man, they kind of like a cat?
Absolutely. Yeah. He's an antidote to what they see as the pomposity of mainstream media, people on television. They know stuff you don't know, and they're fed up with it. And we're not talking about them. Pete, his name is Buttigieg. He's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana.
Pete Buttigieg.
Buttigieg, thank you. He is saying, my constituents are saying, what about me?
Well, but this is the question I have whenever I hear that. Don't we talk about these folks all the time? There have been so many stories of this particular Trump voter staring soulfully out a window that I think you could print an entire thick New York Times of just that picture. We talk about them every day.
Liars.
There are polls about them every week. We're constantly talking about these people. How can they feel not talked about? We talk about them every day.
Well,
no, keep on making excuses for losing an election.
Not everything sucks. I mean, there are.
Well,
I've had
you
Howard
two
Stern
fucking
on my
suck.
show, so you watch
two
my language.
Fucking knuckleheads suck.
It is true. There's a lot of good work going on, and not all the media deserves to be criticized. I see these women in Iraq and Afghanistan with the helmets, and I think, holy cow, what if their parents are watching? Come home, honey. Daddy will get you a job at Starbucks. And it is true. Man. It wasn't totally ignored.
But it disconnected
wasn't hit
and detached
with all
from
the same
reality.
graphics and computer animation. Trump was such a magnet that I think they were overlooked. And I think they have a right to say, what about me? Because I don't think media dug deep enough to see the pain out there, the broken hearts, the disappointments, the people
media
who
is not going to
believe
dig deep enough
in
because they
America.
don't fucking care about
Went
the
to
regular
church
commoners.
every Sunday and sang in the choir. And I think they were ignored. I just do.
Yeah, of course they were ignored.
Your interview took place this.
He finally said something that was that fucking was accurate. They were ignored on purpose. Real stories of Americans suffering from just the middle class being destroyed systematically. So see, it's lies mixed in with truth, but more lies, more deception. These people were ignored, and they've been ignored for a long time. The people going welfare and the people going, these cupcake teenagers going to the universities that are taught bullshit and lies and just basically divide and conquer, doped with divide and conquer ideology. It's the perfect combination for a country that's going to burn.
There is only
stick system of systems.
I will MK Ultra ya, put the MK scope on ya. If the MK hits you, it's guaranteed to open ya. The 57mm Mark 110, 220 rounds a minute, try to stop them. Don't put that on your wish list, that's retarded babble. Protesters make the hit list soon as they start to rabble. They are nothing but fishes in the barrel. It doesn't have to be Christmas for a carol. Some decorate with ornamental decorum, some perform shock and awe on Hanukkah and Purim. That's where my job come in. I am a blessing to the mercenary for the corporation selling weapons to them. Any potential competitor step into them. I'm authorized to knock them out and stick a GPS into them. They want to sell uranium to Iran that's enriched. That's a bitch. Now we gotta teach them lessons.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.TV.